Hi, it's Stephen here for Bland Designs, and today I'm going to do a review of the Vicki Boutin crayons. Now, you've heard me mention Vicki before in a couple of my past vlogs because I first discovered her when I bought a pot of her glaze. This is the Iridescent Glaze. Since then I have all her glazes. I think they come in silver, gold, iridescent, and just regular glaze. And I really fell in love with this product. So I thought, well, why not get her crayons as well? So they come in sets of 8, and they're 3 sets. There's a cool, there's a warm, and there's a neutral. And really, that's a manufacturing ploy to get you to buy more product because really, there's not a lot you can do with only one set of these. So that's how they get you there. I'm not really saying that in a negative way. That's just how marketing works. So 3 sets, as I said. The price on them, I paid $21.79 a set. What do they look like? Well, they come in these little boxes, and let me just get this one open here. And they're in a little holder, little plastic holder that you can open up just like this on your desk, or you can lay it down. And yeah, they're kind of fat in their size. And Vicki also mentions, and if you go, and I'll put links for her videos on how to use this product. If you go onto her YouTube videos, you will find she says when you first open them up, there's going to be a white film on the tip. And what she suggests you do before you actually use them is take a baby wipe and just wipe those tips. And that's all you need to do. Now, my first impression, I've already used them. Actually, this is a brand new box. I hadn't used these colors yet, so that's why all the tips are not done. But my initial reaction is that this is a fairly expensive product. If you're going to get all the colors, so there's what, 8 in a box, so there's 24 colors in total at $21.75. Now, it might be cheaper where you are. I'm quoting in Canadian dollars. That's kind of pricey because that's over 60 Canadian dollars before tax for a complete set of these. Now, mind you, you could buy something like Neil Color 2 and you get a package of 10 of those for around $20, $25, $30. They're a little bit more expensive than these. So, in relative terms, these are a little better deal in terms of cost, but they're still an expensive product. So this is why I'm doing this review, because you might not want to invest that much money into a water-soluble crayon, because there are lots of other alternatives out there that work pretty well, pretty good. So we're going to check out how these work. Now, right from the onset, I want to tell you that these are very, very creamy, and they're very, very soft. So soft that I broke the tip without applying any real hard pressure to it off of one of my crayons that I tried right off the bat. And you can see it right here in the package. The tip broke right off. That right there, I think, is a negative because I did not press that hard. The tip broke. And do you want a whole bunch of broken crayons? I don't think so. The other thing I do like is I like that they come out of the box and in this little stand, which I think is kind of convenient. I'm just going to set these over here for a second. Get these other ones out of the way because I'm just going to work today with just a couple of the crayons from this set. So what am I going to do, and what else do I want to mention about them? So, well, the colors are very brilliant. They're creamy. I've already told you about prepping them, and they seem to break easily. Those are out of the box my initial reactions before I've even done anything with them. Now, I'm going to try a lot of the techniques that she recommends, and you can check that out in the links below, her videos as well. But she's the creator of this product, so of course she's going to try these different methods that work for her. So I'm going to try to duplicate her results, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion about this. I'll tell you right from the beginning, she has not sent me this product. I bought this product on my own. I did reach out to Vicki Boutin because she is a fellow Canadian, and I told her that I would be doing a review of her product, that I loved her glaze, And to date, that was about a week and a half ago, to date I've had absolutely no response from her. Maybe more about that when I finish up. Okay, so let's get started. What I've done is I've taken 3 styles of paper. I have watercolor cardstock. This is Tim Holtz cardstock. One side is kind of rough, the other side is a little bit smoother. I've used ordinary cardstock. This is just plain, ordinary, cheap, white cardstock that comes from Michaels. And I've used that same cardstock, that white cardstock, but I've gessoed it first with just everyday common gesso. No big deal there. So what are we going to try first? Well, let's try and see what this is like if you just use them right out of the box. Don't add any water to them, nothing, just use them like a pastel crayon. We'll see what happens. So remember, this is my watercolor paper smooth side. This is my ordinary cardstock. This is my gessoed cardstock. I'm going to grab blue because blue is my favorite color. And I'm just going to scribble a little circle on each one of these. Now look, you see how soft these are? I'm getting little teeny bits. Can you see that? That are coming off. And that I do not like. I don't like that. Okay? Maybe once you get using them and you get past that little point at the beginning, maybe they won't do that much anymore. Okay, so I've drawn a little circle on each one of these. I'm going to make sure my fingers are dry because I just touched a baby wipe, so I want really dry fingers here, and we'll just try rubbing them when they're dry. On the watercolor paper, they actually blend out pretty nice. On the cardstock, not too bad either here. Yeah, that blends out pretty nice as well. And on the gessoed cardstock, about the same. The gesso cardstock you might get, as compared to the regular cardstock, you might get a little bit more mileage on this. They seem to be able to spread them out a little further with your finger. But overall, yeah, as a dry product, they seem to blend out pretty good with just your dry finger. Okay, so what about with a wet finger? So I'm going to draw my little, maybe I'll pick a different color just so we have a little bit of contrast happening here. So let's try the purple again. Little circle of color in each one of these. I am not pressing on these hard, purposely so the point won't break. I didn't press that hard on the first one either, but you see it didn't happen this time, so maybe that's the key. So just be gentle with them. All right, so we're going to try this with a wet finger. So I'm going to get a fresh baby wipe, and I'm just going to moisten my finger with the baby wipe and see what happens. Okay. Now, this baby wipe isn't making my finger all that much wetter than when it was dry, but they do blend out about the same. Okay, maybe I need to get my finger a little wetter, but we're going to come to using more water in a minute, so I'm not going to worry about that. All right, so what are we going to try next? Well, let's try it with a water brush. Now, you could use a water brush, or you could use a little pot of water and a regular paintbrush. It doesn't really matter, same kind of effect. Let's put some more color. Let's grab a green here. And let's make sure my water brush is watery. Yep, I got water in there. Okay, let's see how this is. Now this is the watercolor paper. That blends out quite nice. Now there are other products out there that when you do this and you draw a little circle or a line, you will still see the line. You won't get rid of that. But on the watercolor, that worked out very nicely. This is the cheap cardstock. Now on the watercolor paper, you would expect it to blend out better because that's watercolor paper, but it's blending very nicely on the cardstock as well. And here's the gessoed cardstock. And that too blends out very nice. Actually, I'm almost liking it blending on the non-gessoed cardstock better than on the gessoed cardstock, which is not what I would have suspected. Okay, let me just clean off my water brush for a moment here because there's something else I want to try. Are these permanent when they're dry? I don't think they probably are. I imagine water's going to reactivate them. So I'll try back here on the blue that I first put down dry. And yeah, they definitely reactivate. But as you reactivate them, you can blend them out a little bit more too. So that's kind of a plus. Now, funny, look at that. I'm getting some of the white gessoed cardstock coming up when I do this. Now, I don't know, maybe I don't have a thick enough layer of gesso, although I covered the whole surface with it. But yeah, I'm kind of liking what it's doing here better than what it's doing there. But that is really not a criticism of the crayon, that's just a criticism of the paper. Okay, let's clean off the water brush. So, what's next? What about applying it with a baby wipe? Or let's see what happens with a baby wipe. So this is the watercolor paper, and I've got let's get a brand new baby wipe. Nice fresh one. I like to do backgrounds a lot with acrylic paints and other water-soluble products with simply a baby wipe as opposed to a paintbrush. So let's see what happens. I've already had these down. I'm not getting a lot of color movement right now, but that could simply be because I've been playing with this. Whoa, look at on the gesso. Now, isn't that interesting? On the gessoed cardstock, those three colors that have been sitting there blend it right out. On the non-gessoed, I'm having to rub quite a bit to try and get this out, and it's not blending at all. And on the watercolor paper, the same thing. So that's really interesting. See, I'm really rubbing this, in fact, to the point where my paper is starting to pill. But on here, it moved around quite nicely. Now, mind you, it's not very dark, so you'd have to but I didn't put them on there very dark. That's interesting. Okay. Okay, but let's be fair. I already had the color down on here. It's been sitting here for a while. So maybe I should try a different method with the baby wipe. So let's flip our cards over. No, let's not flip our cards over because they're getting a little damp. Let's put those over to the side. Let's take another piece, watercolor, smooth side, regular cardstock that's been gessoed. Okay, and let's take some of this color. Let's try this color. And for this technique, why don't we try just scribbling onto our non-stick craft mat. And let's spritz it with a little water. And then get out our baby wipe. And just dip that in and see. Now this is the... Okay. It spreads. This is a watercolor, but look how I'm not getting really any depth of color. Let's put some more on here. Okay, try, this is the regular cardstock. Again, oops, the color is, it spreads, but it's very, very pale. And let's put some more down. And you can see I'm trying to use the same amount each time. And this is the gessoed, and yeah. Okay, in order to get any real color out of this, like get it darker, let's see if I scribble some of the color right directly onto this watercolor. Okay, this is giving me a little darker blend. All right, so that's the secret here. You need to do layers, and rather than doing it on the craft mat, do it directly on your background paper. So this is the regular cardstock. Again, the more you rub it, the more chance you have, depending on your quality of your cardstock, of pilling. And let's try it on the gessoed cardstock. And the gessoed cardstock is almost repelling it. I'm getting color down here, but it's not as dark as on the other two. So at this point, my conclusion is, when it comes to doing backgrounds using these methods, if you want darker color, don't use gessoed cardstock. Use either regular cardstock or use watercolor cardstock. Okay, so from there, where shall we go? She does something called an ombre effect using her acrylic block, and then stamps it for a background. So I am going to flip these papers over. Now they're a little on the wet side, so I am going to give them just a little dry. Because I did have, those baby wipes were fairly moist. So I want to make sure the back's here. The only reason I'm doing them on the back is I don't want to cut more paper. I'm just being lazy. And the gessoed one. Okay. I think I'm dry enough. All right. So I'm going to take a small acrylic block, and I'm just going to scribble a couple of these colors to get sort of an ombre effect. So let's see here. See, this one's flaking. So the flaking properties seem like, because I'm using the same amount of pressure with each one of these crayons, seems to depend on the color. So maybe that has something to do with the chemical makeup of each color, whether they're how soft they are or how hard they are. I don't know, because I'm using exactly the same pressure on each one. Okay, let's return these to the box. I do like this little box. I think that's really convenient. Okay, so we're going to mist this just a couple of spurts. And this is the watercolor paper. Now this is the rough side of the watercolor paper. I'm just going to hold this down for a few seconds. Okay. This is the regular cardstock. Now I'm running out of crayon. Normally you'd probably reapply, but I'm just seeing what kind of an effect we can get. Okay, so out of the three of these, I kind of like the regular cardstock the best because the colors are more brilliant. This, of course, has the rougher side of the watercolor cardstock, so you're going to get more texture. And this is the gessoed cardstock, and it's okay too. But this one's the one I'm preferring. So, quick way to do a background. Let's just see anything left on here. So this would be a quick way to do a background on a card too. So that's not too bad. And you can do this method with other water-soluble crayons as well. So yeah, this works okay for that. All right, let me just clean off my block here. And let's take these out of our way. And let's go to what we're going to try next. So how about stamping on a card? Okay, so let's take, I'm going to take these first cards. They're fairly dry. And I'm going to use the back side of them. So that's the watercolor. That's the regular. No, this is the regular cardstock, and this is the gessoed cardstock. And we're just going to take our stamp, put it on a block, and then we're going to color on top. And I'm just going to apply it, make sure this is in the sight. And I'm just going around, and I'm going to use several colors on here. We're going to the greens. I'm being a little bit haphazard about this. I'm not really too concerned. I'm just blending it around. Okay, get our paper back here. Now, we're going to take this block. We're going to mist it lightly. Just 2 little squirts. And let's go on the watercolor. I'm giving it a fair amount of pressure and letting it sit because this is watercolor paper, so I'm letting it absorb a bit. Okay, so with this I got sort of a watercolor effect. It is bleeding around, which you'd expect on watercolor, so that worked pretty good. Now I want to take a paper towel to make this fair. I'm just going to dry this a little bit, and I'm going to reapply my colors. I'm going to use the same colors as I did last time and get them relatively in the same spots. Okay. 2 quick little blasts, and this is the ordinary cardstock. Hold it down for a few seconds. I'm giving it as much equal pressure as I can. And that's pretty good too. And really between the two, there isn't a great deal of difference. So let's dry this off and try it on the gessoed cardstock. Okay, a little water, and here's my gessoed cardstock. Again, overall pressure. Now maybe I didn't give enough pressure on that side, but I don't know. I think all 3 of them work equally as well. Again, I keep leaning towards the regular cardstock for some reason, which I find very surprising because that's not something that I would have expected. So cleanup is pretty straightforward. Just wipe it off with a baby wipe. Okay, just give that a quick little pat dry. So that's with rubber stamps. What can we do next? Okay, how about coloring using a paintbrush dipped into the crayon that you've scribbled on the cardstock? Okay, I'm going to use, I've got these already stamped, Now, because this is a water-soluble product, I did not use a water-soluble ink or dye ink. I used a solvent ink. I used StazOn because it's waterproof. And that was the same stamp as I used a minute ago. So we're going to do some coloring. So I'm going to get out crayon. I'm going to just pick 3 colors. Not worried about my color combination. And I'm going to use my water brush for this, but you could also use your just a paintbrush and spritz this with water. Okay, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of the purple first and just try painting. And yeah, that works pretty good on the watercolor. Works pretty good on the cardstock and on the gessoed cardstock. Works pretty well there, except it's a little lighter, but that may be just the color combination. Or I mean, I've gotten as much on the tip. Let's try the blue. And I'm just putting this down fast because it's a demo, so here I'm not really that too concerned if I'm not staying inside the lines. And just for the sake here of the demo, we'll try another third color. Yeah, so painting this way works pretty well. So, and it worked fine on all 3 types of substrate. So another way she said that you could color too is direct from the crayon itself. So let me just clean off this point and let's get a color that's a little different from the other 3. And what she said you could do is just grab the color right directly from the crayon itself. And yes, that works, but this is coming out a little lighter. Now maybe I'm not getting as much on. Maybe that's my problem. So just indulge me for a second. Put a little of this on the craft sheet. Yeah, and that's probably, you get a little better coverage if you put it directly onto your craft sheet as opposed to just pulling it from the crayon. But again, you could just dry it and do another layer if you want to do it from the point, if you don't want to do it this way. But yeah, as a form of paint, like a watercolor paint, it seems to work fairly well. Okay, let me just clean this up. The baby wipes becoming kind of pretty. You know, I don't necessarily always throw out my baby wipes. I sometimes let them dry and I use them in other projects. Okay, that's just an aside. So we tried that. Let's try some stencil work with this. Let's flip these cards over. And I have a stencil here. And what she did, she simply took her stencil and she scribbled on it with her crayons. Okay, so, and then what she did was she spritzed it with a little bit of water. I just gave it 2 quickies, turned it over, laid it onto her background, took a paper towel, and just pressed it. This is the watercolor paper, and this is the rough side. Okay. So let's add some more color before we try it on two quick little squirts. This is the regular cardstock. Yeah, this is a little bit more detailed, but I think it would depend on how much color you've applied to your stencil, and there's no way that I can make this perfectly even. And this is the gessoed cardstock. Yeah, so really, they all have potential. They all have potential here. So let me just clean off my stencil for a moment, and let's try something else. Okay, so that was like using your stencil like a stamp. What about just taking your stencil and I've got these two pieces here. Just putting them down. And what if we were to, two ways we could do this. We could just add color and wipe it through with a baby wipe. Or we could lay color down, apply it with a water brush over the stencil and see what we get. That'd make it really liquidy. Let's try, let's grab a different color. Let's try this. Let's just try scribbling over the stencil just like this, taking a baby wipe and just wiping it through. Okay, that has potential. I'll try it here on the regular cardstock as well. Yeah, about the same results. I'm not going to try it on this because I think we're going to get about the same results as well. But another thing we could do is put it down, scribble some color on our craft mat, take a water brush or a paintbrush dipped in water, pick up some color, and do sort of a wash over top of our stencil. Yeah, you can do it that way too. So it would depend. This would look great in a mixed media journal, using it to create backgrounds, because you don't care about the background having a lot of definition, and you're not going to get a lot of definition using a water-soluble product, because with a stencil they're going to seep underneath it. But it's another technique that could be used. Okay, let me clean this stencil off. Okay, so let's just regroup here for a second. Get some of these used things out of the way. What else can we try? Well, here's something she didn't try, but I'm going to try, and that's color dipping. And color dipping is like what Tim Holtz does with his products. He takes some of his inks, he applies them to a craft sheet. Just add a little bit more of that. Oops, that's not the one I wanted to do there, but it's okay. And he spritzes it, I can't say the word. He misses it, not over, with a little water, gets it to bead up, a little bit of beading here, and then he takes a card, and I'm just going to use the back side. This is the watercolor one, that's the rough side of the watercolor one, and then he just smushes it about, and there you go. You can do that with these as well. So let's just try it with the regular cardstock. I'm going to try it on the same side as I have this because I don't think that's going to make much of a difference. Now I don't have as much of this on here, but yeah, you can do the same thing with that. So there's another method. So you have a product that you can use in multiple ways. If you were going for portability, these might do a lot of different techniques with one product that you would normally use maybe several different products for. Okay. Okay, let's clean this off for a minute. So, what about splatters in the background? At this point, I think we know the difference between the three papers, so I don't think I need to show each one of these next techniques with different paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try her splatter technique. And what her splatter technique was basically to take a wet brush. I'm going to use my water brush. I'm just cleaning it up here. And she took one of the crayons. I'll use one of the darker colors so it'll show up maybe a little better on here. And all she does is wets the crayon and then she flicks it. And actually, I don't know if the camera's picking this up, but I kind of like this effect because what I'm getting is a very fine splatter pattern. I'm the kind of person who doesn't really like to splatter on my pages. I like the effect, but I get it everywhere. I get it all over. This is a little bit more controlled. So this I'm kind of liking. It's almost like an airbrushed effect. Now, the more I hit it, the more I flick, the bigger the drops. Oops, that was because, oh yeah, so more water. I'm squeezing the barrel of my water brush here, and I'm getting bigger splatters. That I kind of like. A lot of ink on here, but yeah, I like that effect. Here, I'll just hold it up a little bit more so you can see. But I like that technique. Now that's something I learned from Vicki's YouTube presentation because I have never tried that with a water-soluble crayon before. And because these are so soft and creamy, it works very well, I think, doing that. Look at the amount of pigment I'm getting out of my brush. Almost a waste here. So I like that technique. That worked very nicely. All right, if I clean this up enough. Just bear with me for a moment. Okay. So the last thing I want to try, two things more I want to try. One of them involves using it with her glaze. And this is her iridescent glaze, but she said you could use it with her silver or whatever. So I'm just cleaning off a spot here. What she does, so if you want to get some shimmer, she says, she takes a little bit of her glaze. That's probably enough. This glaze, if you haven't seen it, I've talked about it in a couple of my vlogs, and it's very creamy, it's very soft. I quite like using it, although it does take a while to dry, and it seems to dry best by air, although I did apply a heat gun to it and it dried not too badly with that, but it is very soft. And then she took Let's change my color here. Let's use a little purple. She scribbled some of the crayon down onto her craft mat. And then she took a brush. I'm just going to use my water brush again. And she just mixed it in. So she's tinting the color. Now I'm wondering if I need more. And then just brushed it on. And it should give a shimmer effect. And I think it does. Now I could make this darker if I add a little bit more. Let me go with a little darker purple. And let's get out some more of the glaze. I may have used too much glaze. I'm just going to use just a dollop. That's all I'm using. And I'm going to clean off the water brush a little bit. And just mix this in. And you see this is a little darker, but I used a little darker purple, and I used less of the iridescent glaze. But I am getting, this is kind of nice, you're getting some shine. I'm not applying any more water. I'm not squeezing on the barrel of my water brush. Okay, but it does have some shine. See if you can see that. There you go, you see the shine. So that's kind of nice. So using her two products combined together give you that effect. So I kind of like that. So the last thing I want to try, and this is not something that she showed or even mentioned, I'm wondering if you can make these into a color spray. So in order to do this, I am going to have to get some other equipment for this. I want to get a mini mister with some water, and I'm going to use my palette knife to shave off a little bit of the crayon into the mini mister. I'm going to shake it up, and I'm going to see what I get as a spray. So I'll be back. I just have to get my equipment set up for that. Okay, so what I've done to mix up my spray is I've taken a little sticky note and just folded it in half so I have a ridge. I scraped off from one of the blue crayons some pieces. I just used the edge of a palette knife and just scraped off some of the color here. And I've got a mini mister. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to try and get it in the bottle. This may be more effort than it's worth. And I'm really not sure how much water I should pour in this, but I'm just using a little water. I'll fill it, is that half? Maybe just a little drop more. I'm only going to fill it about halfway up. Oops, that may be 3/4 of the way up. Give this a good shake. You can see the color is there, but I want to get it to dissolve completely because it would probably plug the spray hole. So I'm giving it a really good shake. Let's just take a look and see if I can see any particles in here. Looks pretty good, but just to be on the safe side. Okay. Now this is just the back of one of those cards, and this is just the ordinary cardstock. So I've got this. I mean, the color through the bottle looks pretty good. So let's see what happens when I spray. Yes, yes, that does work. So there's something she didn't show. So you saw it here first, people. But yeah, that works really well as a spray. Now I've oversprayed here, as you can see. But yeah, So there you go. There's another product, if you're on the road and you only have a limited amount of space for taking things with you, that you can do. You can mix this up in a mini mister and make your own spray as well. So that's pretty good. I'm impressed by that. Okay, so that's everything that I want to test out on here. But some final comments about all of this. All right, the negatives. I don't really have a lot of negatives. The price, well, if you're going to use it for a lot of different things, then the price is not terrible for them because you only need these. Portability is good, again, for the same reason. If I want to use a spray, I can make a spray. If I want to paint with it, I can paint with it. If I want to stamp with it, I can stamp with it. If I want to make an ombre effect background, I can make an ombre effect background. If I want to apply it with a baby wipe, I can. With a water brush, with a paintbrush, I can. So all these things you can do with this one product. So that has me impressed. So overall, do I think it's worth investing in? Yes. If you don't want to lug a lot of stuff off with you to a crop or something like that, or you don't want to get out a whole lot of products, then yes, this is worth the price. I especially like the way that you can blend it with her glazes. I especially liked making it into a color spray because that worked really well. And you saw how much of that I put in the bottle. It wasn't that much. Just word of caution, it is water reactive, so this is not a permanent product. So if you're doing mixed media, for example, you want to plan your layers. If you're going to apply a wet medium like a gel matte or some other products, this is going to bleed through. But there's ways to get around that. You could put down a layer of clear gesso, you could spray it with a fixative, whatever, and I think you would avoid the problem of this running. So overall, I think it's a really great product. I think I'm going to be using it quite often. And yeah, it makes me want to go out and grab some more of her products that she has. I think she has a line of glitter. I think she has some stencils and things, and check those out as well. Now, I don't want to finish off on a negative note, but it's not so negative. I found it a little bit disconcerting that I wrote to her, I reached out to her, and I did not get any kind of answer. I have reached out to other creators of products before, like Tim Holtz, for example, and I have gotten a reply from Tim Holtz. I am not one of those people that follows him around like some stalker or anything like that, but she was not that big of news. Quite frankly, I had never heard of her until I saw her glaze. Apparently, she's been around for a few years. She's been doing workshops and things like that. Great for her. But you know, it's us little people out there who make or break the success of these designers. And does she stand out from the crowd? No, she does not. Jane Davenport from Australia has a whole lot of really excellent products. Of course, there's always Tim Holtz, and that's always the golden standard there. But there are others out there that have mixed media products like this that you can invest in. The one thing I like about Vicki is that she is a fellow Canadian, and I want to support Canadian crafters. So Vicki, if you happen to see this out there, give me at least a shout out or something to let me know that you do care about your consumers. The local scrapbooking store approached her to have her come and do some make and takes or stuff with her product. Her answer was, if you don't have a minimum of 40 people, she's not going to do it. I don't know too many scrapbooking stores in my area anyways, or in general, that are big enough to be able to accommodate 40 people in a workshop. Maybe some down in the States can, but up here, I don't know of too many that can. So that's an attitude thing. But I'm going to dismiss the attitude of the creator from the product. The product stands on its own. It's a good product. I like it. I am going to use it. And so I hope that this has helped you make a decision as to what kind, when you're buying a water-soluble type of product, what would work best for you. So we'll talk to you soon, and maybe I'll do another review of one of her other products later on. Bye-bye for now.